Have you ever paused to marvel at the magnificent tapestry of life surrounding us today? The towering elephants, the galloping herds of zebras, the apex predators of the savanna, the sprawling human metropolis, our vast oceans and desolate dunes, down to the fragile miracle of a newborn's first breath. But have you ever truly pondered the genesis of it all? Modern science has elegantly decoded the complex biology of human reproduction, but does it answer the ultimate enigma? How did the very first spark of life ignite in Earth's primordial soup? It's a profound question that inevitably haunts us all. Driven by sheer intellectual prowess, humanity has engineered an epoch of unparalleled technological marvels, forging hypersonic transit, aerospace leviathans, atomic power, and deep space rockets. So much so that we now stand on the precipice of colonizing the desolate frontiers of Mars. But were we truly the first architects of this world? Long before the dawn of man, did another apex entity possess absolute dominion over this planet, ruling it with the same undisputed sovereignty? To unearth the answer to that cosmic mystery, we must rewind the unforgiving clock of time, hurtling backward nearly 4 billion years, to an epoch where the concept of time itself was unmeasured. There were no chronometers to track the hours, no calendars to mark the millennia, and absolutely no trace of human civilization upon this desolate, primeval terrain. In fact, humanity was not even a whisper in the cosmic wind. This prehistoric realm was under the absolute, terrifying reign of a singular, dominant lineage. The colossal dinosaurs, prehistoric leviathans whose deafening roars shattered the skies and whose very footsteps sent seismic tremors rippling across the fragile Earth. Their sheer mass was so staggering that a single behemoth could effortlessly strip an entire grove bare just to sustain its colossal appetite. Yet these seemingly invincible titans did not inherit the Earth as giants. Their incredible evolutionary saga began in a form astonishingly fragile, hatching no larger than a modern-day fowl. It begs a profound question. How did such diminutive creatures metamorphose into towering leviathans? It is a logical curiosity because, just as boundless ambition propels human advancement, it was the relentless crucible of countless millennia that forged these primeval beasts into towering anatomical marvels. But by what biological mechanism? To unravel this mystery, we must turn back the cosmic pages and return to the very genesis, where the first chapter of our epic saga began. In the preceding installment, we witnessed the violent birth of the cosmos through the Big Bang, a cataclysmic explosion that coalesced cosmic dust and primordial gas into our stellar furnace and a molten Earth. We observed the apocalyptic planetary collision that forged our moon, whose gravitational pull helped kindle the very first spark of microscopic life within the abyssal depths of ancient oceans. But how did those primitive cells evolve into the fearsome dinosaurs? How did these apex rulers maintain an iron grip on the planet for 150 million years, only to be instantaneously wiped from the face of the Earth? What was the catastrophic anomaly that eradicated their mighty empire without a trace, ultimately clearing the evolutionary path for the rise of humankind? To uncover the next chapter of this thrilling odyssey, stay with us until the very end, and if you wish to witness the violent genesis of our solar system and the dawn of life itself, be sure to experience Part 1 of this series, linked in the description below, to fully grasp the magnitude of the journey ahead. So let us wind back the relentless clock of time. To truly grasp the magnitude of this journey, close your eyes for a moment and envision. You are hurtling millions of years into the abyss of deep time. You have now arrived at an epoch where the very face of our planet is utterly unrecognizable from the world we know today. A realm entirely untouched by human civilization. Gale-force winds howl through the alien canopy, while your feet sink into a treacherous, primordial mire. Towering, exotic flora surrounds you in every direction, and from the shadowy distance a bone-rattling vibration approaches. Thump, thump, thump. As you slowly raise your gaze, a colossal silhouette eclipses the horizon, its piercing, predatory eyes locked dead upon you. This is no hallucination. This was the Age of Titans, an era where the mighty dinosaurs held absolute terrestrial sovereignty. long before the first footprints of humanity ever marked the soil. But how did these prehistoric leviathans claim dominion over the Earth before our own ancestors even existed? What did this primeval world look like before the dinosaurs took the throne? Let us plunge deeper into the mists of antiquity to uncover the truth. The world before dinosaurs. To truly comprehend their evolutionary genesis, we must hurl ourselves backward a staggering 300 million years to an alien Earth entirely devoid of dinosaurs. Step aboard the vessel of our imagination and journey back to the Permian period, a desolate epoch 300 million years in the making. In this prehistoric chapter, the true apex rulers of the terrestrial domain were not dinosaurs, but their distant evolutionary ancestors, the early formidable reptiles. Among the most extraordinary inhabitants of this epoch was the Dimetrodon. The magnificent creature you see before you was no dinosaur, but a primordial pioneer that vastly predated their existence. Picture a formidable reptilian frame, crowned with a massive dorsal sail resembling the grand mast of an ancient galleon. This spectacular crest was far from mere ornamentation. It functioned as an ingenious biological solar panel, absorbing the sun's radiant energy to rapidly thermoregulate its cold-blooded vascular system, ensuring it was perpetually primed for a lethal ambush. Do not let its modest proportions deceive you. It was a ferocious apex predator of its microenvironment, ruthlessly snatching up primitive insects and aquatic prey. And astonishingly, this formidable beast belongs not to the dinosaur lineage, but is in fact a profoundly ancient, long-forgotten ancestor of humanity itself. Paleontologists classify them as mammal-like reptiles, transitional synapsids that harbored the very first anatomical blueprints of all future mammalian life. Over millions of years, this vital evolutionary branch eventually gave rise to warm-blooded, fur-bearing creatures. Thus, one could argue that, long before the terrifying reign of the dinosaurs, the Earth was actually ruled by our own evolutionary forefathers. Yet, following the Permian period, the trajectory of life took a dramatic pivot, ushering in the dawn of the Mesozoic Era, widely immortalized as the Age of Reptiles. The opening chapter of this monumental epoch was the Triassic Period, commencing roughly 250 million years ago. This epoch witnessed an unprecedented evolutionary explosion of reptilian life, a biological deluge. And amidst this dense primeval menagerie, the most legendary lineage in terrestrial history made its maiden appearance: the dinosaurs. But make no mistake, the Triassic landscape was far from a dinosaur monopoly. The globe was teeming with an array of bizarre and formidable archosaurs, presenting fierce, relentless competition to these early dinosaurs. Lurking in the murky shallows, perfectly camouflaged like a primeval crocodile, was the Proterosuchus. Meanwhile, out across the arid plains, vast herds of Dicynodonts roamed without restraint. These robust, pig-like herbivores possessed a highly specialized anatomy, most notably a distinct parrot-like keratinous beak flanked by twin protruding tusks, perfectly adapted for shearing tough terrestrial vegetation. Together, this diverse menagerie had mastered a crucial biological frontier: absolute terrestrial supremacy. Their heavily armored, desiccation-resistant scales shielded them from the blistering prehistoric sun. And most crucially, they possessed the revolutionary adaptation of laying hard-shelled amniotic eggs. This calcified fortress guaranteed the survival of their embryos, even in the most unforgiving arid environments. It was upon the robust foundation of these successful evolutionary blueprints that the dinosaurs would eventually construct their colossal empire. Yet survival during the Triassic was fraught with extreme peril, for stalking these badlands was an apex predator that struck sheer terror into the hearts of all: the Proterosuchus. This 6-meter-long titan was a terrifying biomechanical marvel, resembling a massively built terrestrial crocodile that prowled atop its powerful hind legs. Armed with lethal serrated jaws, it ruthlessly hunted down competing reptiles and grazing herbivores alike. Even the nascent, rudimentary dinosaurs of that era were relegated to little more than terrifying appetizers on this titan's lethal menu. the cosmos is governed by an immutable law. No absolute reign is eternal. The grandest empires rise to glory, only to inevitably crumble back into the sands of deep time. This exact geological reckoning awaited the Triassic. Even the most formidable apex predators remained blissfully unaware that their ultimate executioner was not a rival beast, but the very planet beneath their feet. And thus the apocalyptic epitaph of the Triassic was authored not by biology, but by catastrophic geology. Our world during this epoch was entirely alien to the globe we recognize today. Every continental plate was fused into a singular, colossal landmass, the supercontinent of Pangaea. But now, violent tectonic forces boiling deep within the mantle were beginning to fracture this planetary giant. Deep seismic rifts began to splinter Pangaea's crust, violently tearing the landmass asunder. And from these catastrophic abysses, the searing, molten blood of the Earth erupted into the open air. This was not a singular volcanic event, but a planetary rupture spanning thousands of kilometers. Simultaneously, an endless barrage of fissures violently spewed rivers of fire and toxic exhaust into the choked heavens. Modern geologists classify this unparalleled cataclysm as the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province. These gargantuan tectonic rifts tore open precisely where the future Atlantic Ocean would one day reside, a catastrophic fissure forever divorcing the Americas from Europe and Africa. These relentless eruptions terraformed the Earth into an apocalyptic hellscape. The primordial skies were rapidly saturated with a lethal, suffocating cocktail of noxious volcanic gases. The opening salvo was a staggering hyperemission of carbon dioxide, relentlessly enveloping the entire globe beneath a dense, invisible thermal blanket. Solar radiation was effectively trapped, unable to dissipate back into the cosmic void. Our planet began to aggressively bake from within, transforming into a sweltering, inescapable planetary furnace. But this thermal nightmare was merely the prologue. Vast plumes of sulfur dioxide synthesized with atmospheric moisture, saturating the clouds with corrosive acid. Soon the heavens wept, not with life-giving water, but with relentless, flesh-searing acidic rain. This toxic deluge scorched the terrestrial flora into brittle husks and profoundly acidified the oceans and riverways, condemning countless aquatic organisms to a slow, agonizing asphyxiation. The cascading hyperthermal event triggered a catastrophic biome collapse, pushing land-dwelling fauna and terrestrial plants beyond their physiological limits. Simultaneously, a profound oceanic anoxia took hold, sealing the fate of marine life, where primitive vertebrates like conodonts suffocated in the deoxygenated abyss. On land, vital botanical pillars of the ecosystem, such as the seed ferns, were systematically eradicated. In the apocalyptic aftermath, extreme volcanism and abrupt climate shifts had exterminated roughly 76% of all global species. Yet, paradoxically, this planetary extinction event became the ultimate evolutionary catalyst for the dinosaurs. Amidst the smoldering ruins, a hardy few endured. Subterranean proto-mammals, a handful of resilient marine reptiles, and the highly adaptable early dinosaurs managed to weather the apocalypse. Their survival was anchored in an astonishing capacity for evolutionary adaptation. At this stage, these nascent dinosaurs, pioneers like Eoraptor and Herrerasaurus, were diminutive, bipedal creatures, no larger than modern fowl. They were fleet-footed pursuit predators, fiercely carving out their ecological niche by outmaneuvering sluggish reptilian rivals. At this dawn of their existence, they relied not on brute strength, but on calculated speed and lethal agility. However, with the apex competitors violently wiped from the biological board, the Earth effectively became an empty kingdom. Vast, newly vacated ecological niches, boundless territories, and untapped resources were now completely monopolized by the surviving dinosaurs. Propelled by an unprecedented abundance of sustenance, unexploited territories, and boundless freshwater, these diminutive early dinosaurs underwent a radical evolutionary metamorphosis, swelling into colossal, earth-shaking leviathans. They would enforce a spectacular, undisputed reign across our planet, for a staggering 150 million years. Yet, even this magnificent dynasty was destined to face an apocalyptic curtain call. How did their world end? But before we decode their sudden annihilation, we must first unravel an equally profound biological mystery. How did creatures no larger than a common pheasant balloon into mountain-sized titans? What catalyzed the dawn of these prehistoric giants? Let us delve into the fascinating mechanics of this evolutionary gigantism. Following the cataclysmic volcanism that violently terminated the Triassic period, the Mesozoic Era seamlessly transitioned into its second transformative chapter. We call this the Jurassic Period, a pivotal epoch spanning from roughly 200 million to 145 million years ago. It was within this vibrant crucible that a new biological vanguard emerged, ushering in the very first mammals, protobirds, and the true dinosaurian behemoths. By the dawn of the Jurassic, the planet's tectonic architecture was undergoing a majestic and violent reconfiguration. The supercontinent, Pangaea, once an unbroken planetary monolith, was relentlessly fracturing. It was tearing apart into two colossal landmasses, Laurasia in the northern hemisphere and Gondwana to the south. This monumental continental drift carved out virgin ocean corridors, fundamentally altering the globe's hydrological flow, which in turn initiated a dramatic climatic shift. Fierce monsoon-like weather patterns began to sweep across the land, radically transforming the botanical tapestry of the Earth's surface. A lush proliferation of verdant ferns, ancient cycads, and towering coniferous pines thrived in this humid paradise. Eventually, this fertile ground would even incubate the very first angiosperms, the primordial ancestors of all flowering plants. These dynamic ecological conditions engineered a profoundly enriched biosphere. A smorgasbord of novel vegetation erupted across the continents, sky-piercing arboreal giants, tender broad-leafed flora, dense thickets of needle-bearing conifers, and vast undulating expanses of primitive ground cover. This botanical windfall catalyzed a revolution in foraging strategies. Some species adapted to graze on low-lying ground cover. Others evolved to strip foliage from towering canopies, while some engineered entirely novel mechanisms for bulk ingestion. Amidst this shifting ecological paradigm, a specific lineage of dinosaurs, the Sauropodomorphs, executed a monumental evolutionary leap. Initially, these were relatively modest, mid-sized herbivores. Take the Plateosaurus, for instance, a creature measuring roughly 4 to 10 meters in length. These early dinosaurs were biological marvels of versatility. They could sprint bipedally to evade predators in an instant, yet seamlessly transition to a quadrupedal stance for relaxed foraging. Sustaining themselves on lush ferns and ancient cycads, their elongated necks provided a distinct morphological advantage, allowing them effortless access to the nutrient-dense upper canopies. Whether navigating dense, shadowed timberlands or traversing sun-baked open plains, the Plateosaurus thrived across diverse ecosystems. Their greatest evolutionary asset was their profound adaptability. It was precisely this biological resilience that crowned them the undisputed pioneers of the Jurassic. Upon this very foundation arose even more colossal titans, such as the Volcanodon and Spinosaurus, marking the true dawn of the Age of Giants on Earth. As the Jurassic epoch unfolded, an evolutionary arms race for sheer size was ignited. An early champion of this biological gigantism was the Volcanodon, a behemoth forged in the primordial landscapes of southern Africa. It represented a monumental leap past its Plateosaurus ancestors. It had become a dedicated quadruped, its immense bulk now supported by 4 massive columnar limbs engineered to bear staggering gravitational loads. Spanning 11 meters, nearly 36 feet, in length, its elongated neck and sweeping tail served as a biological preamble, foreshadowing the truly awe-inspiring scale the dinosaur kingdom was destined to achieve. Volcanodon effectively served as the foundational blueprint for those titanic sauropods, the legendary biological architecture that would secure their terrestrial dominion for eons to come. As the Jurassic progressed into its middle epoch, the Earth birthed another astonishing dinosaurian lineage, the Shunnosaurus. Discovered across the expanses of modern-day China, this Middle Jurassic marvel spanned an impressive 29 to 33 feet in length. Its most striking anatomical feature, however, was its tail, terminating in a formidable, heavy, club-like weapon. This was a lethal deterrent against predatory ambushes. Beyond its weaponry, it possessed a sweeping neck for high canopy grazing, supported by a skeletal structure that was miraculously lightweight, yet incredibly robust. These creatures were the crucial evolutionary stepping stones propelling sauropodomorphs toward absolute gigantism. Their entire anatomy was systematically re-engineered to sustain astronomical body mass. Simultaneously, their digestive systems underwent a radical upgrade, evolving to chemically pulverize the toughest prehistoric vegetation. Between 160 and 140 million years ago, spanning the Middle to Late Jurassic, the sauropodomorphs ultimately achieved their most majestic and awe-inspiring apex of gigantism. This was the era when planetary titans like Brachiosaurus, Diplodocus, and Apatosaurus claimed absolute supremacy. Their sheer scale was so unfathomable that they can only be rivaled by the largest creatures existing today, the blue whale. To comprehend their sheer consumption power, imagine this. Had these leviathans existed today, a single herd could decimate an entire African forest ecosystem in a matter of hours. Let us examine these titans in closer detail. Behold the Brachiosaurus, an unparalleled Jurassic giant whose colossal fossilized remains have been unearthed across both North America and Africa, reaching staggering lengths of 82 feet and standing 39 feet tall. Its elongated, giraffe-like neck provided an unmatched evolutionary advantage, allowing it to effortlessly strip foliage from the highest untouched canopies. Astonishingly, its colossal skeletal structure was remarkably lightweight. It utilized an advanced avian-like respiratory system, allowing for a highly efficient, continuous, unidirectional flow of air. This critical adaptation delivered the massive oxygen payload required to sustain its 30 to 60-ton bulk. Now, let us shift our gaze to another iconic giant, the Diplodocus. The Diplodocus was renowned for its astonishingly elongated, slender silhouette. While measuring a breathtaking 24 to 30 meters in length, its highly specialized anatomy kept its weight to a surprisingly modest 15 tons. Its defining feature was its seemingly endless, tapering tail. This structural marvel functioned as a crucial counterbalance and potentially as a lethal, whip-like defense against encroaching predators. Equipped with distinct, peg-like dentition engineered precisely for raking and stripping, it spent its days efficiently harvesting vast quantities of soft vegetation and ground-level ferns. Finally, we encounter our third magnificent titan, the Apatosaurus. Historically recognized as the Brontosaurus, this formidable beast measured roughly 22 meters long and carried a staggering mass of 20 to 30 tons. Powered by a heavily armored skeletal frame and dense, hyperdeveloped musculature, it was a biological fortress. Much like the Diplodocus, the Apatosaurus utilized its massive, sweeping tail as a terrifying acoustic and physical deterrent against carnivores. It possessed the ecological flexibility to graze on both towering conifers and low-lying brush. The undisputed triumph of these titanic sauropods lay in the perfect synergy between their radical biomechanics and the bountiful Jurassic environment. By migrating in colossal herds, they established a nearly impenetrable collective defense against predation. This naturally raises a compelling question. If the globe was saturated with these peaceful, herbivorous giants, what kind of predator could possibly threaten these titans? The chilling truth is that the dinosaurs' greatest enemy was themselves. Just as it takes a diamond to cut a diamond, in this primordial crucible, the only force capable of destroying a dinosaur was another dinosaur. The dinosaur kingdom was fundamentally bifurcated by diet. Thus far, we have observed the gentle giants, the the majestic herbivores that peacefully sustained themselves on the lush, prehistoric flora. But there exists a much darker, far more terrifying chapter to this saga. For the dinosaur lineage also spawned some of the most ruthless, highly evolved apex predators the Earth has ever endured. The true golden age for these carnivorous leviathans arrived during the third and final chapter of the Mesozoic Era, the Cretaceous Period. This was an epoch when dinosaurian diversity and absolute terrestrial dominance reached their absolute zenith. Yet, in a cruel twist of cosmic irony, this very pinnacle of their existence would ultimately precede their total, cataclysmic erasure. However, these apex carnivores were not engineered overnight. The evolutionary blueprint of these killing machines traces all the way back to the Triassic Period, originating with modest, agile predators like the Chicxulub, who relied on lightning-fast reflexes to snatch up smaller prey. As the Triassic gave way to the Jurassic, a biological arms race commenced, and the carnivores began to dramatically scale up in mass and ferocity. Enter the formidable Allosaurus, a specialized predator possessing the lethal anatomical hardware required to systematically dismantle sauropods several times its own size. And then dawned the Cretaceous Period, ushering onto the stage the most infamous evolutionary nightmare in the annals of natural history, the Tyrannosaurids. These were not mere animals. They were highly calibrated, biomechanical killing engines, bioengineered for singular, catastrophic violence. And the undisputed sovereign of this terrifying lineage was the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the undisputed apex sovereign of late Cretaceous North America. Boasting a 14-meter-long frame and a staggering mass exceeding 7 tons, this leviathan wielded bone-crushing jaws engineered for absolute devastation. It ruthlessly preyed upon heavily armored herbivores like Triceratops and Hadrosaurs. Fascinatingly, modern paleontologists now theorize that this terrifying predator was also cloaked in a primitive plumage of feathers. Yet, would you believe that this merciless executioner, a beast whose very name sent tremors across the globe, could seamlessly transition from a bloodthirsty killer into a nurturing patriarch? Indeed, the T-Rex shared a profoundly human trait, a deep familial bond. Much like a modern parent toiling to provide for their household, these colossal predators were dedicated providers, meticulously hunting to sustain their offspring. Did these prehistoric titans experience affection akin to human intimacy? Incredibly, yes. To ensure the survival of their lineage, they engaged in elaborate courtship rituals. Let us unravel the fascinating, intimate secrets of dinosaur romance, the art of prehistoric reproduction. Picture a male Triceratops aggressively flaunting his majestic horns, performing an intricate rhythmic display to captivate and court a prospective mate. Or a plumed Velociraptor executing a dynamic, avian-like courtship dance. Paleontologists hypothesize that male dinosaurs utilized vibrant plumage, elongated tails, and striking cranial crests to woo females, much like the mesmerizing displays of a modern peacock. This brings us to their remarkable strategies for propagating the species. Dinosaurs were strictly oviparous, meaning they brought forth the next generation by laying meticulously crafted eggs. Encased in rigid, calcified shells of calcium carbonate, these eggs were structurally identical to those of modern birds. Yet, here is the ultimate biological paradox. Regardless of a dinosaur's monolithic scale, their eggs remained astonishingly diminutive. For instance, a colossal 30-foot sauropod deposited eggs no larger than a standard football. It is a staggering biological paradox. These prehistoric incubators varied wildly in their morphology. Hadrosaurs favored perfectly spherical clutches, whereas the terrifying theropods laid distinctive, elongated, oval-shaped eggs. Astonishing fossil records unearthed from the desolate expanses of the Gobi Desert and ancient Chinese fossil beds reveal that these titans were meticulous architects. They constructed elaborate nesting grounds woven from earth, sand, and primordial vegetation. creating veritable sanctuaries for their unborn. Remarkably, species like the misunderstood oviraptor actually brooded over their clutches, utilizing their own body heat for incubation in a striking parallel to modern avian behavior. Upon hatching, these fragile neonates emerged as miniature, yet inherently lethal versions of their parents. A newborn Tyrannosaurus Rex, for example, entered this brutal world scarcely larger than a domestic feline, yet it possessed an explosive growth rate, rapidly ballooning into the undisputed tyrant of the Cretaceous. Conversely, the offspring of the Mosasaurus were altricial, remaining fiercely guarded within the nest, while their dedicated parents foraged for sustenance. Fittingly christened the Good Mother reptile, the Mosasaurus' fossilized remains offer irrefutable proof of a highly advanced, empathetic level of parental devotion previously thought impossible for extinct reptiles. Microscopic dental wear and pulverized skeletal fragments discovered within these nests suggest a remarkable behavior. These massive parents actively regurgitated partially digested foliage to nourish their vulnerable hatchlings, mirroring the tender care of modern nesting birds. However, prehistoric parenting was far from universal. Many species operated with cold detachment, depositing their clutches in the sand and immediately abandoning them to the unforgiving elements. These abandoned hatchlings were thrust into a brutal trial by fire the very second they broke their shells. Operating on pure, primal instinct, these prehistoric orphans were forced to instantly master the art of the kill or face swift extermination. Consequently, these orphaned hatchlings were forged into lethal carnivores from the very moment of birth. In stark contrast, herbivores like the hadrosaurs established sprawling, communal nesting grounds, deploying coordinated herd defense to fiercely protect their vulnerable young. Such vigilant fortresses were essential against the relentless threat of predation. The Cretaceous landscape was experiencing a terrifying population boom of specialized carnivores, and among these burgeoning ranks of apex killers emerged the Dromaeosaurids, a terrifying family of theropods that included the infamous Velociraptor. Though relatively compact at roughly 2 meters in length, they were remarkably cognitive, hyper-agile pursuit predators. Fossilized remains unearthed in the unforgiving Mongolian Badlands reveal their signature weaponry, an enlarged, retractable sickle claw on each hind foot, biomechanically engineered to hook, disembowel, and incapacitate their prey. Operating in highly synchronized packs, velociraptors were capable of toppling megafauna exponentially larger than themselves. It was this deadly intersection of advanced intelligence and tactical coordination that cemented their lethal reputation. Prowling the prehistoric expanses of North America was its much larger, heavier cousin, the Deinonychus. While possessing greater muscular bulk, it executed the very same devastating pack-hunting strategies. Yet, the fossil record would eventually yield a predator far stranger and more imposing. Enter the Spinosaurus, arguably the most bizarre and highly specialized hypercarnivore of the entire Cretaceous epoch. Haunting the ancient river systems of North Africa, this heavily armored, dark-scaled leviathan presented an absolutely terrifying profile, spanning an immense 12 to 18 meters in length. It was crowned with a staggering dorsal sail, towering 1.5 to 2 meters high, while biomechanically adapted as an apex piscivore to dominate aquatic ecosystems. It remained fully capable of slaughtering terrestrial dinosaurs that wandered too close to the shoreline. Its elongated crocodilian snout and unprecedented semi-aquatic lifestyle made it a unique evolutionary marvel. But if you assume that retreating to the ocean's depths offered sanctuary from the dinosaurian reign of terror, but pause for a moment. That assumption would be a fatal miscalculation. For ruling the abyssal depths was a marine leviathan known as the Mosasaurus, the undisputed sovereign of the prehistoric oceans. It projected an empire of terror across the aquatic realm, paralyzing marine ecosystems from inland riverways to the open seas. As an apex hypercarnivore, it executed brutal, lightning-fast ambushes, dragging unsuspecting terrestrial prey into the watery abyss with its bone-crushing jaws. Stretching a staggering 17 meters in length, it was an unparalleled engine of aquatic death. Meanwhile, back on dry land, another terrifying predator prowled the prehistoric expanses of South America, the Carnotaurus. Measuring 7 to 9 meters long, this bizarre carnivore was distinguished by prominent, demonic cranial horns and bizarrely vestigial, almost comically stunted forelimbs. However, it compensated with explosive terrestrial speed, relentlessly running down smaller herbivores. While apex killers ruled the ground, the Cretaceous skies witnessed a profound biological metamorphosis. Certain theropods were actively evolving into early avians. The evolutionary seeds, sown by the Jurassic Archaeopteryx, fully blossomed in the Cretaceous with the emergence of transitional dinosaur birds like Confucius ornis. Armed with sophisticated plumage and hollow pneumatic bones, these pioneers forged the direct evolutionary pathway to all modern birds. Certain diminutive theropods, such as the breathtaking Microraptor, even mastered primitive gliding utilizing an astonishing four-winged anatomy. Yet, as these highly specialized carnivores rapidly evolved and proliferated, a grim ecological imbalance began to take hold. The global herbivore populations faced relentless decimation. Colossal vegetarians, from towering sauropods to heavily armored triceratops and vast herds of hadrosaurs, were systematically hunted down. But nature, in its infinite and ruthless balance, was about to unleash a catastrophic reckoning upon the apex predators themselves. An apocalyptic threat that would permanently extinguish the dinosaurian reign. But before we witness their fiery annihilation, let us pause to marvel at the pristine majesty of the Earth, just moments before its demise. In its final golden age, our planet was an impossibly verdant Eden, far more lush than the world we inhabit today. It was a thriving biome of impenetrable rainforests, winding continental river systems, and shallow, sun-drenched seas absolutely exploding with biodiversity. And colossal reptilian leviathans held absolute dominion over every corner of the globe, terrifying apex predators like the T-Rex, executing lethal ambushes with their razor-sharp dentition and bone-crushing jaw mechanics, heavily armored herbivores like the Triceratops, wielding a lethal three-horned cranial crest and a robust, bone-plated frill to repel any adversary, alongside towering, long-necked titans like the Brachiosaurus, stripping foliage from the uppermost prehistoric canopies. Above, airborne reptiles like the pterodactyl commanded the skies, while deep within the abyssal oceans, colossal marine predators like the Mosasaurus ruthlessly patrolled for their next kill. This was the zenith of the Mesozoic Era, an unbroken 165 million-year dynasty where dinosaurs held the terrestrial throne. Yet ominous fractures were slowly beginning to splinter this golden biological age. Deep within the Indian subcontinent, an apocalyptic volcanic region known as the Deccan Traps violently awakened. These mega eruptions were of such cataclysmic scale that they flooded millions of square kilometers beneath a relentless ocean of searing magma. With every explosive rupture, a lethal cocktail of toxic gases, predominantly sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide, was injected straight into the stratosphere. This noxious saturation triggered highly corrosive acid rain, which violently acidified the global oceans and decimated terrestrial flora. As severe temperature fluctuations wreaked havoc on the climate, countless prehistoric species were already locked in a desperate struggle for survival. Yet, this intense volcanic stress was merely a prelude to the true apocalypse. The ultimate extinction event was rapidly approaching, and its terrifying genesis began high above in the silent vacuum of space. A cosmic harbinger of death had emerged from the darkest depths of the solar system, an astronomical behemoth, a monolithic asteroid measuring 10 to 15 kilometers across, hurtling on a direct collision course with Earth. Forged of dense primordial rock and heavy metals, scientists identify this planetary assassin as the Chicxulub impactor, It was plunging through the cosmic void toward our fragile biosphere at a staggering, inescapable velocity of 30 kilometers per second. Its velocity was unfathomable, hurtling through the void at roughly 150 times the speed of a modern supersonic jet. The dinosaurs remained blissfully oblivious to the impending doom. To their primitive eyes, it appeared merely as a faint, shimmering anomaly in the nocturnal canvas, a solitary star that ominously swelled in magnitude with each passing twilight. They possessed no cognitive capacity to comprehend that this mesmerizing beacon of light would ultimately orchestrate their total annihilation. But destiny had already set its apocalyptic course. Then 0 hour arrived. Just off the coast of the modern-day Yucatan Peninsula, this gargantuan extraterrestrial payload slammed violently into the Earth's crust. The sheer kinetic energy of the impact was incomprehensible, unleashing a detonation equivalent to millions of atomic bombs simultaneously. It instantaneously gouged a catastrophic crater into the bedrock, spanning 180 kilometers wide and plunging 20 kilometers deep. Today, this geological scar is known as the Chicxulub crater. The thermal flash from the collision was so astronomically intense that it immediately vaporized and liquefied solid rock for hundreds of kilometers in every direction, igniting the very atmosphere into a sprawling, global firestorm. A rare, extraterrestrial element known as iridium, highly concentrated within the asteroid, was violently ejected, blanketing the entire planet in a cosmic shroud. This iridium anomaly remains permanently etched into our fossil record today. The impact triggered an instantaneous, planet-wide cascade of devastation, unleashing apocalyptic firestorms, hyperseismic tremors, and towering mega-tsunamis. The kinetic transfer was so absolute that within mere milliseconds of contact, an unstoppable supersonic shockwave erupted outward, obliterating everything within a radius of hundreds of kilometers. The barometric pressure from this acoustic wall of death was so extreme, it ruptured the lungs of living creatures on contact, snapping ancient arboreal giants like fragile twigs and violently launching the surrounding dinosaurs into the scorched heavens. Even the most indomitable apex predators, like the mighty T-Rex, were instantly eradicated, their colossal frames violently catapulted through the air like weightless debris by the sheer concussive force. Subsequently, the entire planet was engulfed in a global firestorm. Superheated subterranean rock and pulverized debris from the impact were violently ejected into the upper atmosphere, only to violently re-enter as a relentless, incandescent rain of fire, instantaneously igniting the world's forests below. This apocalyptic barrage of superheated fallout is scientifically classified as ejecta, as primeval woodlands incinerated, choking plumes of smoke and ash saturated the atmosphere. These megafires were so catastrophically vast that they rapidly depleted the planet's oxygen supply, triggering a fatal spike in atmospheric carbon dioxide. Simultaneously, hyperseismic tremors ravaged the globe, registering at an unfathomable magnitude of 10 or higher. These earth-shattering quakes violently fractured the continental plates, aggressively reawakening dormant volcanic networks far and wide. The already turbulent Deccan Traps were thrown into overdrive. These colossal volcanic fissures erupted with unprecedented ferocity, violently spewing apocalyptic volumes of magma and toxic exhaust into the choked skies. Out at sea, the kinetic transfer birthed monstrous mega-tsunamis, towering walls of water nearly 100 meters high. Surging inland like liquid mountains, these colossal waves violently obliterated coastlines, instantly sweeping away entire dinosaur populations. Marine leviathans and delicate ammonites alike were mercilessly pulverized in the churning oceanic chaos. Furthermore, toxic sulfur emissions triggered severe acid rain, causing rapid ocean acidification that systematically dissolved the shells of countless marine organisms. A prolonged darkness descended, initiating a brutal nuclear winter and the systemic collapse of the global food web. The initial cataclysm was merely the prelude. The true era of mass starvation and terrestrial death had just begun. An impenetrable shroud of pulverized rock, soot, and volcanic ash completely blotted out the heavens. This suffocating atmospheric canopy was so dense that life-giving sunlight was entirely banished from the Earth's surface for months, perhaps even years. Earth was plunged into a relentless nuclear winter. Global temperatures plummeted by 10 to 20 degrees Celsius. Deprived of life-giving sunlight, the botanical foundation of the planet, entirely reliant on photosynthesis, withered and perished. While a few resilient ferns clung to life, the towering arboreal giants were eradicated. The herbivorous titans that somehow survived the initial cataclysm, such as the Parasaurolophus, were now condemned to a slow, agonizing starvation. As herbivore populations rapidly flatlined, the apex carnivores faced an existential crisis. Highly coordinated pack hunters, like the Velociraptor, found themselves utterly deprived of sustenance. Driven to desperate cannibalism, their complex social structures collapsed, ultimately sealing their doom. Simultaneously, beneath the waves, the photosynthetic phytoplankton, the very bedrock of the marine food web, succumbed to the darkness. Furthermore, toxic emissions like sulfur dioxide violently degraded the stratospheric ozone layer. The planet was subsequently bombarded by lethal doses of ultraviolet radiation, compounding the apocalyptic death toll. This devastating confluence of ecological catastrophes culminated in a mass extinction event, permanently wiping over 75% of all species from the face of the Earth. Yet, the spark of life was not entirely extinguished. A resilient minority endured. Diminutive burrowing mammals, subsisting on subterranean seeds and insects, managed to survive the fallout. Similarly, cold-blooded crocodilian reptiles found sanctuary within the insulated depths of aquatic ecosystems. Most crucially, the avian dinosaurs endured. These primitive, feathered flyers were compact and required minimal caloric intake to survive the famine. Therefore, every bird that takes flight today is unequivocally a living, breathing dinosaur. But in the immediate aftermath of the impact, roughly 66 million years ago, this shattered world belonged exclusively to those unassuming early mammals, sheltering in subterranean networks and scavenging whatever insects or seeds remained. They inherited the ashes. Over the course of millennia, the suffocating atmospheric veil finally dissipated. The sun pierced through the gloom, climatic stability was restored, and the Earth slowly began to heal. A vibrant new botanical era took root, and the meek inherited the Earth. Mammals swiftly usurped the vacant ecological thrones left by the dinosaurs, expanding rapidly in both scale and diversity. Over the ensuing millions of years, an unrelenting evolutionary march was set in motion, giving rise to the first agile primates, our distant arboreal ancestors, navigating dense prehistoric canopies to forage. Then, approximately 6 million years ago in the heart of Africa, a groundbreaking biological shift occurred, the emergence of bipedal hominids. This relentless evolutionary trajectory ultimately culminated roughly 300,000 years ago with the dawn of Homo sapiens, anatomically modern humans, creatures possessing unprecedented cognitive prowess, capable of forging sophisticated tools and bending the primal element of fire to their will. This extraordinary leap was the climax of relentless adaptation and shifting climates, a sprawling, fascinating saga in its own right. This marked the dawn of the Cenozoic Era, widely heralded as the Age of Man. But the intricate genesis of humanity, how we rose from the primordial dust to engineer global civilizations, and the evolutionary milestones that defined our ascent, is an epic tale reserved for our next episode. Thank you for joining us on this temporal voyage. Before you go, let us know in the comments how you felt experiencing this prehistoric odyssey, and what mysteries of human evolution you wish to uncover in our upcoming installment. Until then, keep marveling at the infinite wonders of our cosmos, and thank you once again for staying with us until the very end.